ever since the dawn of the digital age with our video game consoles, where like eShops or just online shops in general were available for you to download and buy digital content, there has been this problem where they get filled up with shovelware, spam, garbage games, if you will. There's definitely some diamonds in the rough there, but there's a lot of developers out there who really just take advantage of these marketplaces. Even PC's not, immune to that. The Steam store is full of a lot of junk. But one of the biggest problems I see is with these online shops is how they curate these lists of games to showcase them to you. The Nintendo Switch is probably the worst, in my opinion. I mean, their shop is kind of slow and sluggish and annoying to use to begin with. But just the way the lists are curated and just thrown at you, just go on there and look at the Nintendo Switch eShop. You're just going to see just tons of stuff that you would think would be free games on a mobile phone type of thing. It's ridiculous. And I really do think that some of these companies should be putting like stricter guidelines in place as far as how games are released on their systems, because I do feel when it becomes a dumping ground, it really devalues the experience. It devalues your brand. That's just my opinion. But it looks like, this may be a rumor, but it looks like Sony is going to be putting some guidelines and punishments in place for companies who are taking advantage, because a lot of companies do. There was that controversy a while back where on the Switch eShop, companies were trying to game the system by putting games up for a penny or some nonsense, right? But Sony, maybe this could be looked at as a little too extreme. It could be looked at as a good thing or a bad thing, as long as it doesn't affect like people who are actually developing games, like indie developers and legit developers who are putting their blood, sweat, and tears into games and putting them out there. I don't see this as a negative, as long as nobody else is affected. But the way this looks, and they're talking about Sony removing shovelware and easy platinum games from the PlayStation store. So this article on thegamer.com, they talk about how a lot of people play these games for trophy hunting and whatnot. Myself personally, I don't care about trophies on the PlayStation. I don't care about my gamer score on the Xbox. It's meaningless to me, but some people really do put value behind that, and more power to you. No hate, that's what you're into. Great. But on the PlayStation Network, if you're buying games or downloading games for easy platinums, the hell is the point? Like if it's a game where you download it and it costs you $1, and you just hit the X button like 20 times and you got a platinum, like that what does that prove? How can you be proud of that? You're just padding out your score, your trophies. It doesn't make sense to me. But it looks like possibly Sony has seen this and is like, you know what? Maybe they do think like, hey, this is devaluing what we're doing with our PlayStation store. But it looks like right here they say that supposedly Sony has informed developers that it's going to be implementing stricter guidelines and cracking down on shovelware in games that appear to have little more to offer than an easy platinum. And it goes a bit further than that. It's not just, like I said, it shouldn't target like legit developers, but there is this like subset of people who are just opportunists. They take advantage and they just copy games over and over. They copy games. They use the same game engine or a game engine that they purchased to be able to use, and asset packs, and they just throw everything together real quick and put it out there. As long as it's semi-functional, put it out there type of thing. Some are like way more ridiculous where they're extremely simple, no effort. They just threw it up there. But that's what it looks like. People who are just copying and have little to offer type of thing. So it says, when partners oversaturate or spam the PlayStation store with many variants of the same type of content, it can negatively impact both the customer and partner experience. I agree with that. That's why I don't look at these damn eShops or online stores, because they're just like flooded with garbage, stuff that I have no interest in. It's like, how do these companies target specific content to you? They really don't. They just throw a bunch of crap at your face and you got to sift through it, unless you know specifically what you're searching for. But the discoverability of quality games is very difficult, like unknown games, very difficult, extremely difficult on these shops, right? So it goes on to say that PlayStation then lists what will be considered spam or repetitive content moving forward. Among the products that will now fit are games that are copied, not meaningfully different from pre-existing games. multiple concepts that have duplicative functionality that only have minor variances of assets. So yeah, just swapping things around, same game a million freaking times. Maybe it's a group of developers. Like some people have like 10 different companies and just sell the same game through a different label each time with minor variances, different cover art type of thing. And it's legit. Like, just look at these shops, man. Happens all the time on Steam, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, everywhere, right? So PlayStation recommends developers that might be guilty of that aggregate those games into a single experience to avoid falling foul of the new punishments for doing so. So it just goes on to say, copying stuff, not meaningfully different, that kind of thing. Multiple concepts and product variants published by individual partners, that are only differentiated only by minor variances of functionality or assets. So, yeah, they're creating these games that they're like easy platinums. They're just trying to game the system, And then it says, as for those new punishments the list is a long one. It ultimately depends on the product and whether the developer responsible for it is a repeat offender. Listed among the consequences are restricted discoverability and having the content delisted from the store entirely. Should the same developer be warned and punished multiple times, it could even result in a suspension from adding content or an outright ban. Good. As long as it doesn't target the wrong people. But that's always the problem. You put in new guidelines and stuff like that, and that is typically what happens. There's glitches, things, it happens on YouTube all the damn time. So I could see this like going afoul and affecting people that it shouldn't. But hopefully, if this rumor is true, that it goes smoothly and, get those shops cleaned up, man. I would hope Nintendo would clean up their shop as well, but at the same time, if they never did, whatever, no sweat off my balls. I'm just playing the games I want to play. But then, also it feels like, man, there's diamonds in the rough. There's crazy, awesome stuff out there that is so hard to discover unless there's word of mouth. There's a lot of developers out there putting a lot of effort into these games and throwing them out there, and they get buried. And I think that's a big problem. Very difficult to find these games. And, they're just dumping grounds now. That's just the way it seems to me. Like, I wouldn't be against these companies having control over what was released on their system. Like, why do you want it to be like the Android store? And that's the way it seems. The Google Play Store. That's the way it looks when I go on the Nintendo Switch specifically. The PlayStation, I don't go on that shop too often, but it does seem like a mess too. I just think this would be beneficial to both the consumer and honest developers out there. I'm not saying like completely restrict and shut down these shops. I'm saying the same stuff like what Sony supposedly is saying. The shovelware, the clone games. That there's no real reason for them to be up here. Then you're going to have people like, all these games should be backed up and preserved. Do all of them deserve to be backed up and preserved? Because a lot of them are just clones of one another, just trying to game the system. I think it's ridiculous, but let me know what you guys think. Do appreciate y'all. Bye.